So a lot of this meeting is going to be, a lot of this weekend actually, is going to be about physical preparedness, but at the same time, we're not wanting to leave out the
Spiritual.
the Lord in this, because number one, I would put it in this order. God has to be first in all of our preparedness. And if He's not first, you might as well just forget the rest of it, because you're on a self-help program to going down. But there are things that we can do. God expects us to do what we can do. It's like as He was talking about with the health and with the lady going home and taking different herbal remedies. She went home, she did what she could do, God blessed, and she was healed. And so we need to do our part. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is things to help us on our part. Not only just to be to help ourselves, but it's so that we can help other people.
So you're part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Part of the solution with it. Yeah, come on up here, you guys. So one of the things that we want to, and we're going to try really hard. We're really good at talking over each other, but we're going to really try really hard to not talk over each other so y'all can hear. We want to go over some basic survival equipment. And what we're going to show you is a lot more than bare bones basics. So as I looked at all of the tents going up and all of the materials, and of course we're not exempt from that because we're the ones in the great big fifth wheel out here. And it was loaded very heavy. But we need to learn to be able to survive with less. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing is what we can store in our minds. So, in other words, if I were to hand you a knife, some source of starting a fire, and Matt's getting out samples over here, would you be able to survive if we sent you out there in the woods? That's the question. And at what level of comfort would you be able to survive? And so, of course, knowledge in our minds becomes number one. That is the first thing. Go ahead.
You can have those two items or much more, and if you don't have the knowledge to be able to use them properly, it won't do you any good.
Yeah. Probably the most important thing you can do is test and prove what you have, what gear you have. Now, I'm going to share just a brief bit of a testimony on me. Come here in the middle, dear. So, number one, this is not something we've started recently. A lot of the skill sets that I'm going to be sharing, I've been doing since I was about 6 years old. I grew up with a lot of this, so this is not new to me. I've been camping out and lots of survival type things for many years. I used to carry a pack that weighed in at about 45, 48 pounds, and it wasn't a problem. In 2004, October of 2004, I received a neck injury. It almost paralyzed me. I went from being stronger than I'd ever been. 2 days before I received the injury, I was unloading a semi-truck full of grain, carrying a 100-pound sack of grain on each shoulder. I'd pull one off this side, and I wasn't bulkier or much bigger than I am now. But I'd pull one off the truck onto this side, turn, grab one off this side, throw up on the shoulder, and pack them into the barn and throw them in the stack. And then a water tank had me for dinner, ruptured 2 discs in my neck, and destroyed my life at that point. So I went from being strong to being very weak. I could not pick up a framing hammer up off the floor. I went to that weak, just like that. I couldn't squeeze hard enough with my hand to grip it, either hand, to grip it to pick it up. So suddenly my survival pack became a problem because I couldn't move it. I couldn't drag it. And yet the mindset was still there. My gear pack literally went from, say, 45 pounds to about 3.5 pounds. So, point is, you look at this and you go, I could never carry that. There's no way. You have to design for you. So what we carry between all 3 packs is not the same. We have some overlap. Well, hopefully we can be together, but each of us has enough in our packs that we could be alone.
It's all in how comfortable you want to be. With your 3-pound pack, you could survive just fine. You might not be as happy as, us here, because, we carry some dried food and whatnot as well.
Or like the fella the other night that went to be with his child in one of the shelters, and he decided he was just going to sleep on the ground, and I pled with him, don't do that, you can wake up with hypothermia.
He had shorts and a t-shirt with a light coat.
And so I sent up, out of my pack, I sent up the
wool blanket.
Wool blanket.
Yeah, I sent up wool blankets, but
here,
I
Mom,
also
I'll get
gave
mine.
him can you get to yours faster than I'm getting to mine? Yeah, I sent up this.
This is, we each carry a different type, but it is a thermal tarp. So whoops. It's a thermal tarp. So you heard of emergency blankets? We will be going over that more, I believe, in another meeting.
This will
Yes.
reflect your heat back onto yourself.
So-
You don't want to sleep directly on the ground, even in warmer weather.
Ground is the killer.
We learned this on the ranch where Mark got hurt. In 2000, from 2000 to 2004, he was foreman on a 3,000-acre ranch. And in the spring, we'd have a sunny 75-degree day, and the little lambs would lay down, and in 20 minutes, they would have pneumonia because the ground was cold and wet. We were right on the Pacific Ocean in Langlois, Oregon, at 6 miles off the ocean, and the ground was moist and cold, and that sun felt good to them, so they'd fall asleep, and they'd wake up and they'd be foaming at the mouth because their lung on the bottom, where they'd been laying, had contracted pneumonia. And so we found out very quickly, it's
Ground is a killer.
death sentence if you sleep right on the ground. You have to prepare your bed. So I sent
So, if you-
one
And
of those out.
he used the tarp that night. He laid it down on the ground, and at about 1 a.m. we were up stoking fires, and he came to me and said, I think I've changed my mind about that blanket.
He wanted a blanket then. So he slept warm the rest of the night.
So, like I said, we try to take stuff with us. When I had 3.5 pounds, I did not have a ground cover. I would have to rely on and plan for using natural things, leaves, pine needles, whatever I could find to build that ground cover so that I wouldn't be directly on the ground.
Think of a rat or a
Yeah.
squirrel.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to set these aside for the moment. So we have gone to carrying wool blankets. This is actually a genuine U.S. military surplus wool blanket.
And the reason for the wool is, even if it gets
Okay.
wet, even if you get wet in wool, it will still
Be
keep
warm.
you warm. If you're wearing cotton, like cotton long johns, and you get rained on,
You want me
and
to
then
do
it
it?
gets
I've done it a
cold,
lot.
you're gonna get
I'll do it.
hypothermia. But if you're in long johns that are wool, you won't get hypothermia because the wool will keep you warm.
Another thing you can do with your wool blanket, take it like this. Oops, sorry. Wrap it around you.
This one's a little long.
Yeah, this one's a little bit long. Mine I actually fold in half. Let me fold it in half real quick.
He's making a poncho. And this is for when you're walking. We've actually walked and he will put it over his pack. So it's up and over his pack, but it keeps him then warm.
It is a very good coat. Okay, so it was on the ground. There we go. So now I'm going to fold this across and hold it here. And you can put the pin in on your own.
That's the biggest safety pin you've all ever seen, I think.
There you go.
You can get those on Amazon.
As long as he doesn't pin it to me. What I found, because I have a hard time because one hand's inside, is sometimes I'll wrap it enough so I can get my head, get it off my head, and then I'll hold it, take it off, and put the pin in if I'm by myself.
They'll turn it inside out in other words.
Yeah, and another thing I do if I'm going to wear it this way for a while is turn it, like she said, inside out.
Now we don't have the reflective pin, safety pin advertising by
And
flashing.
we can still,
Here I
we
am.
can work. We can work just fine building a shelter. I've
Yes.
actually tried that for
We've
a while.
done that.
It allows for movability, but it keeps you quite toasty.
So Matt showed the tarp. This is the one I carry. Same thing, thermal. By the way, you put the shiny side, the thermal side up against you, and literally when we slept Sunday night, right up here in the woods with the kids and whatnot, I was dressed like I am right now. Jeans and a shirt, no long johns, no wool clothing, nothing like that. I did a quick setup. The kids all built shelters. I used this little guy. I'm not super impressed. This is called a life tent. With something we've recently gotten. I don't know, should I open this one up, Matt? And
Yeah, basically what it is,
I think
it's going to
I'll
be
go ahead.
annoying.
It's a pain to put back. I'll do it later, though. Okay. So they give me some string. We tie it between two trees. This is a tube. There you go, boys. Come help him.
I want you guys to hold it like the string.
Okay, so
So what you can do is you run your string between two trees through here, and it's a complete tube, and then you lay it down on the ground.
put rocks.
And you put rocks or sticks so that it's a triangle. And now you have, because it's just like a thermal blanket, it will reflect your heat back into you. That's not real great for over and over use, especially if you're too close to the fire.
See a little holes there, and here's a few more. You can see the holes in it. It does melt too close to the fire. We were testing. We were playing with it to see. It also, we discovered another little issue. The seam come undone. But for something that's light and for an emergency purpose, they're quite inexpensive. They also have one that's called a bivvy, which is basically built like a sleeping bag. So you could literally get in this, climb in that, and you don't need this. This is heavy.
Yeah. The only problem I have found with this, because I've used it for one night, it keeps your heat in. I was in it was about 39 degrees that night, and I was in this, and I was quite warm. The only problem with it is, though, it does not let body moisture out. So between 12 and 1 a.m., I woke up and I was wet. And now you're wet, and you're in below the 40s, and now you're cold.
And yeah.
So if you used it for under 5 hours, it would work quite well.
All night could be an issue depending on the temperature outside.
Yeah, it could be fun.
Of course, you got to realize Matt sleeps really hard. So when he climbed in and tucked into that thing, he was in it. If he had not been sleeping so hard, he might have pushed it down before he overheated or something.
Yeah. It does keep you very warm. I was quite impressed.
Until you sweat out.
Well, even when I was still warm when I was in it, when I was wet, but when I got out to get to the fire, then I was just cold, plumb cold. I went home that night.
So that's one thing we don't understand, or we're not taught, that at night your body sweats out like a quart or more of fluid, an adult does. And you'll need to mentally remember that when you're packing, to have a bag to bob out with.
By the way, these things get called lots of things. Bob bags, bug out bag. They get called survival packs. You can call it whatever you want. It's just some basic things. I carry
Basic things.
I carry a tarp in mine. Matt carries one.
No.
No, you don't?
All I have as a tarp is the life tarp.
Oh, okay.
Just this.
Yes.
I still carry a tarp down there.
The other thing we see as a must
Yes.
is bee sting rattlesnake kit. And we each carry one. I'm allergic to bees. Thank God I've only been stung a couple times in my life, and I'm also allergic to the FE pins. So
More so than the bees.
little tip The way Mark brought me back after I was stung by yellow jackets years ago, oh my, 97?
Yeah.
1997? I was stung by yellow jackets, and I knew I was allergic, and so I had the neighbor who was there give me an EpiPen shot, which sent me into a comatose state. My blood pressure, the bottom dropped out.
See the skin?
By the time he got home, he was sort of in a panic, and he called a naturopath and said, "This is what's happened, what do I do?" And the man said, "Give her echinacea." So he got echinacea, powdered echinacea root, and he put it in orange juice, and he started spooning this paste under my tongue, and I was non-responsive. And how long did it take me to come around?
About 20 minutes. She was speaking to me, but slurred. By the way, I used to be an EMT. I'm not currently an EMT, so I can't say I'm an EMT because you have to be currently trained and working to be licensed to be an EMT. So I'm a has-been EMT, I guess you could say.
Something else that we carry. I don't know if you have it in your pack.
I was going to, let me add one more with this.
Okay, good.
This extractor, we have seen work with people, if they're allergic to bee stings and whatnot, you got to get to them quick. There's different shapes of deals. We've actually can see, you get to them within a minute to 2 minutes, you can actually see the poison bead up on the inside of this thing.
Heart attack.
And even if they're not allergic, they quickly, it's like, oh, yeah, that doesn't hurt anymore because you've pulled a lot of the poison out.
Here, you got.
Yeah,
Sunday.
we used it on him
Sunday.
on Sunday. It's called the extractor.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
they
put
have
it up against the skin.
It's a reverse needle effect. That way you can do it to yourself.
So, you know, and I did it on soft skin so that it would show, but there's smaller ones. You can do it on
Anywhere. And it suctions it up and literally draws the poison out.
So it didn't pull the skin up as hard.
Yes, ma'am. It works for snake bite too.
It is for
Whoops. Until you moved your hand.
until I moved my hand wrong, but they
Well,
suck
hair
on pretty
makes
hard.
it hard to seal.
What's that?
Amazon online.
Yes.
Amazon. It used to be able to get them from like Rite Aid and whatnot. I've not seen it there in a long time. It's called the extractor.
Bee sting extractor.
Yeah, it's the extractor. This came in a little fancier, harder case. I've got another. Well, I'll tell you what. Where's my medical kit? We'll talk about this tomorrow.
While he's going over that, Mother Charles mentioned heart attack. What are you going to do for heart attack if somebody tips over on you? Cayenne.
Cayenne, or we actually use this as well for those who have heart trouble. This is the Dr. Schultz heart tincture
Huh?
to put under the tongue.
Yes, something else that cayenne is very good for.
First, like a nitroglycerine, a very good time.
Yes, but our issue
But
is,
we're not doctors, so we can't get that.
I'm just thinking versus the poison.
right.
The cayenne, I have seen.
You showed the knuckle.
Pardon?
You showed.
Here, let's get
This
a.
is a tincture.
Oh, tincture.
It's a cayenne and several different herbs.
Okay.
So this is all herbal.
Okay.
It's hawthorn berry, garlic bulb, yellow ginger root, cactus, and if I could read it here, stem and flower, and then red clover, blossom and motherwort bark.
And you ordered it or
And habanero.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, this one comes from Dr. Richard Schultz. He can be found online.
It's called his website is the Herb Doc.
Yeah.
The Herb, H-E-R-B Doc, D-O-C.
Cayenne.
So here's just another style of this same extractor, just in a different kit.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Easier to find in your pack.
Something else that the cayenne is good for, and we used it up here last Sunday when I was doing the youth meetings for the camp out. If you get cut, cayenne cauterizes bleeding. So no matter how big or little your cut is, as to how much you use, just leave it on, cake it on, and it will stop the bleeding and clean the wound.
And it is amazing. Cayenne is amazing. We were doing a construction job
Okay.
clear out in the country years ago at this family's place, and they had a dog that was usually tied up, and he saw a fawn come out of the woods, and he lunged, and his chain broke. And he took off after that fawn that was old enough to just start losing its spots. And he grabbed it by the throat. And by the time, and it started screaming. By the time we got to that fawn and got the dog off of it, it was spurting blood out of its jugular vein. And Mark said, "Get Cayenne!" And they ran into the house and brought us a little bottle that you can shake
Of
onto
weak
your food,
cayenne.
a very weak cayenne. And I said, "Oh, Mark, I don't know if it's going to work." And I was holding that fawn. I was sitting on part of it so it wouldn't kick us, and holding my hand over the jugular vein to stop the blood. And he removed my finger and immediately just poured that whole bottle onto that, and we packed it in the wound. And then I put my hand back over it. And 15 minutes later, by then they'd gotten the dog out of there. 15 minutes later, I let that fawn get up and go back into the woods. And it was not bleeding. And they saw it come back. They had been actually feeding these deer at a salt lick outside their dining room window. And they saw it for days. It had a place where the hair had been scraped off around that. So it lived. So never underestimate the power of the herbs God gave us.
And don't carry, if you're going to carry this with you, don't carry just the very mild stuff you
Right.
can get from the store. You can get it online. What I carry is actually what we grew from African bird peppers.
And
If you grow your own, don't water your African bird peppers very much. You will have some very hot cayenne.
Yeah. The less water you give them, the hotter they
Yes,
are.
So,
you got a hand up.
okay. We should get her a microphone so that the recording can, video recording.
It's my understanding that when you backpack, you shouldn't have weight any more than half your body weight. Is that true or no? I guess that's for an
I would
average
think
person.
it would go more off of, I mean, you could use that as a rule of thumb, but I would say more so with your physical ability. Somebody at, well, like for example, like when I was injured, there was no way I couldn't have picked half my body weight up off the floor.
But with
But
Now,
wouldn't
if
that depend on how far you were going with the backpack and how difficult the terrain is?
So here's the thing. If we carry a small amount of, Melanie actually I don't think has any food
no, I don't have any food. I'll eat the
in
weeds.
that. So, we're not talking about backpacking camping. We're talking about survival.
When you gotta leave. I carry, and this is because this is set up if we've got to grab and go and not look back. I actually carry, you can find this in Jethro Claus's Back to Eden.
The recipe for
The
it.
recipe for how to make this is called strain and sprain liniment.
Smells quite tasty.
It's, he says put it with rubbing alcohol, but having been a CNA for years, I know that on patients in nursing homes that have liver trouble, we were never to put rubbing alcohol on their skin. That's what we were told. This person has a liver issue. Don't use rubbing alcohol on their sores and problems if you're redressing something. And so we were taught years ago, don't do that. And so we put this, because rubbing alcohol is made from wood resin, excuse me. This is made from vodka, which is grain alcohol. And so this is not
Still-
for internal, this is for external.
Right.
And we use this not only for sprains and strains, we also used it on his neck. And the
That is
last-
what got me well.
They say that when you squish the discs flat and take all the fluid out of them, they will never regenerate. Well, for a year and a half, even after Matt was born, he could not hold Matthias. He had to be sitting in a rocking chair or something and we could put the baby on him, but he couldn't come up out of that chair or walk around the room with him because he started out at 10 pounds. But even 2 years later, his neck was still bad. And so I prayed, Lord, show me what to do. Found out about the strain and sprain. I made a bunch. I started spraying it on every 15 minutes, which he hated because it makes him sneeze and cry. But
How's cayenne
because
in
it's cayenne, myrrh, and golden seal in this. And the myrrh helps the golden seal and the cayenne work twice as long, twice as hard. And so, long story short, the last X-rays you got, he's
2 years ago.
75% loft.
No, I'm 75% of what somebody my age would be expected
for the
to be.
loft, the cushion in those discs.
And they say they never regenerate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have full range of motion
He never had surgery.
with no problem.
There is one thing I would like to mention with the packs, and that is I have seen on Amazon there are packs you can buy that have like a hatchet set. You know, they have a small hatchet and a knife and whatnot, and you can screw different implements together, shovels, etc.
Don't waste your money.
It's not worth it.
Let's give them an example, Matt. Pull your
Which one?
hatchet. So, and I forgot to bring my other one out here. So, Matt and I carry, Melanie does not carry a hatchet.
Yeah, you do.
Well, oh, she does. That's right. I forgot. She's got a little one. Okay. So here's the difference. Obviously, some size difference here. Mine's closer.
The build.
Matt's was about $30, and he's already having issues with the head coming loose on the handle. This is a German-made $97 hatchet. And
If you can get it open.
if I can get it open, that snap always worked really well. Shaped very well. By the way, oh, it's in my side pocket. I also have a file that I carry for sharpening this. So that because that's something we're going to do too, is we're going to talk about when we get to knives and whatnot, how to sharpen.
How'd I end up with 2 of these?
Did you steal mine?
I think I did. I've had one in my pocket and one in my pack.
That's one of the sharpeners.
File. The file can be used for the hatchet and for sharp tools to carry with you. There's 4 different types. Hatchet or axe, depending on what you're going to carry for weight. Machete, saw, and knife. I would not recommend that you carry all of those, especially if you cannot carry much weight. Me personally, I carry all of those. I think Dad carries a saw and a hatchet and a knife. Mom has this small hatchet and a saw and a knife.
Different things. Grab your saw, dear. This is a real fancy setup. This guy's seen a lot of wood. Matt's the same thing, but foldable.
Antoine, what do you see in the difference between this saw and the little saw that you have for cutting wood?
We need a microphone over here for him. Antoine.
What little saw? Like that one?
Yeah, the little one, like this one that you had.
I seen that one cuts way better, and it cuts bigger wood. That one, it'll get the job done, but it'll take you probably twice as long.
Yeah. Anything that you carry with you will work. It may not be as easy. That one will cut through a log that big.
A log?
Yeah, a small log.
A small log.
This one will cut that much. It'll cut a lot faster in the small logs. One thing that we had, I'm going to use as a demonstration from the last camp meeting. I had the youth learning to build survival shelters and whatnot. And I was trying to teach them to use what they have. So whatever they carry, that's all they use. Because if all you have on you is a knife, you need to be able to survive with just that. And I had one of the students there. All she had was a knife, a cheap Walmart
A
knife.
cheap Walmart knife and a fire starter.
Like a $15 knife and a small fire starter, and she built her in shelter just fine, and had a fire.
Have you
Yes.
experienced using a wire saw?
A wire saw.
Yes, I have.
He has, but
I
Matt
have.
has not.
Matt has
I've
not,
got that.
because I won't buy them. They're a waste of time and money.
The wires, they used
they-
to use really good wires.
they don't
but now
last
the wires
long.
don't last.
They don't last long, and they break easily. That's one thing, we'll get to your question in half a second, so we're right behind you there with, and that is test and try. No matter what you get, if you don't use it, you will never know whether it's going to hold up or work or how well it's going to work. With the saws that we had out here, Melanie had these two different saws in her pack. You can see there's difference in the teeth on the saws, okay? And difference there. We got these a long time ago. Man, this has been in your pack for,
Longer than I've been alive.
yeah,
Since before he was born.
I was going to say 20 years, maybe 25 years, something like that. Anyway, we discovered real quickly, I thought this would be awesome. It would stay sharp well and be easy to resharpen. In all honesty, this is really hard to cut wood with.
And that, the reason it's in here is to show you. If I had to go, I wouldn't be packing it.
So anyway, this type of the tooth that's on this Corona, which by the way, that's a Home Depot.
Huh? This one?
No.
You can get those at Home Depot, I think.
Oh, okay. I got
That
it on
brand?
Amazon.
Yeah, it came off Amazon. So that's
What brand is it?
Corona.
Corona. They're a pruning saw, is what they are. But they work well, and they hold up a long
well.
time. Excuse me.
Testing your tools. I had a machete that I carried, and one day I was out trying to chop a branch about that big, which you can do with a machete, and I broke off the blade right there. Just broke it off.
Not this one.
Yeah,
Not
not
this
this one. This one here I found is actually thicker. Believe it or not, I have actually cut stuff bigger with this than I have with my hatchet. I don't think I would be able to beat Dad's hatchet with this one.
Probably
but
not.
It cuts fairly well.
That's something Melanie and I don't carry because of the added weight. Matt really likes it. I'm not a big fan of those, so that's why we switch. Couple more things. There's more stuff in here, but we need to bring out the knives because this is probably well, next to the fire starters, this is probably the most important piece.
You still haven't gotten to,
Oh, question, right. Sorry, we had a question back there.
And once we get to the question, I know it's getting late for
Yes,
some.
we need to wrap it up.
Yeah, so I think it's 8, around 8:50 now. And if
Yep.
we could try to wrap it up by maybe 9 o'clock.
Yep.
And I can tell everyone is really having a great time. And this is really some great information. What we're going to do is try, after we kind of go over the knives and everything, we're going to try to pick this back up bright and early, actually, tomorrow morning, because there's so much really to cover. So we're going to try to get an early start, whatever time that you all think that we can try to get together, and have a prayer, devotion, and then come together once again, have breakfast, of course. But we really need to jump into this and really get this taken care of. I do have a question as well. Going over this end time survival, can you explain to me why is this so important, or are you anticipating something to actually happen in the world, and how is this tied into the Bible?
Let's save his question for the very end. Let's go with the question back there. I'm just thinking that would be an awesome way to finish it for today.
I did not have a question, but I had a comment concerning like the wire saws.
Yes.
One of my friends who likes going camping a lot and uses the kind of stuff told me instead of buying the wire saws, there's like a chain that they would use.
Right.
And they said that it was a lot better than using the wires.
Than the wire one. I've seen those. In all honesty, I've not actually played with the one that's the chain. And I've played with a lot of this stuff, but not all of it.
Try them out. It
So
may work great
if
for
you think, if you think that the main thing is test it, try it, use it. Because if you don't, I mean, like the saw that I pulled out of my pack, that saw is old. I mean, I've done a lot. In fact, we just discovered up here, Matt's is sharper than mine.
Because I just got mine.
His is new, mine's
is
getting
pretty
pretty dull. Still works, but the duller they are, the harder you work.
It's actually the weight.
And it is weight factor.
Advantage. If you are much more into the weight, that's why you can
Yes.
have that. But effectivity, that's more effective, of course.
Right.
I'm sorry, yeah. So it's an issue of the weight or how fast do you want it to be accomplished?
Right.
Right. Our dear Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning wanting to praise you for a new day, for the blessings of a new day. We pray that as we go through our day, as we learn, that you will help us with retention to be able to remember these things. It's much information. And we just pray, Father, that it will be a blessing to each one, that it will, most importantly, draw us each one closer to you, and that we will become more like you. Guide and direct and help us and keep us as we look to our Savior in that most holy place. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay.
Here's this one.
I want to start you out with a thought this morning, and that is, how many of you are, I want to see a show of hands, how many of you consider yourself a survivalist? All right, got a few. I would have hoped it would have been 100%. Let me share with you why. I'm going to go to 1828 Webster's Dictionary for the word survive.
Survive.
And read you the dictionary definition of the word survive. Number one, to outlive, to live beyond the life of another, as the wife survives her husband or husband survives his wife. Now listen to number two definition very closely. To outlive anything else, to live beyond any event. Who would wish to survive the ruin of his country? And it goes on. So the true definition of survive or a survivalist is one who outlives anything else. Isn't that our goal? Do we want to outlive this world so that we can have eternal life? So just to call ourselves a Christian and to desire to be among that 144,000, to strive to have eternal life, to see Jesus coming without seeing death, means that we're survivalist. Has nothing to do with gear and packs and etc. But yet in a roundabout way it does, because if these things can be used as tools to help us survive, then we're a step ahead. So there was several of you, that was a question brought up last night, right at the very beginning. Some of you weren't in here, and so I thought I'd better address that a little more clearly, and then we want to kind of pick up where we left off. And that was a question on firearms. Number one, you will not find any weapons in our gear. This is not a weapon. I don't consider it a weapon. Yes, it can be used as a weapon.
So can a hammer.
But so can my framing hammer, so can the logger's chainsaw. This could be considered a weapon. A shovel could be considered, my flashlight could be considered a weapon. Okay, anything can be, your hand. So if, just because these are considered
Somebody had a
useful,
fist fight.
you know, okay, you get my point. So God's people are holy and harmless.
Psalm 34:7, the angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them. One time I had a man come up to me in a little portico. The store was behind me, and I went around the corner into a little dark place, and there this man was, and he came up to me aggressively, and I knew he was going to try and hurt me, and I just stuck out my hand and I said, "Hi, I'm Molly, who are you?" And I shook his hand with milkmaid's grasp, and he nearly went to his knees. And about that time, Mark came around from out one of the other places where he'd been in with doing his business, dropping off a payment. And the man turned, and I said, "Hi, honey, I'd like you to meet Tom." I forget his name, but he turned around, and the first thing he said to my husband was, "I meant her no harm. I really didn't mean her any harm. I didn't mean, man, she's strong." Well, he didn't say it that way. He cursed a lot, but God helped me, because I could see the aggression in his face, and so I just stuck out my hand, and he was already coming at me to grab me. I just grabbed his hand and shook it, and God gave me strength to take that man to his knees. So can God help us? Yes.
So what made you think that he is aggressive?
He was starting to grab for me.
Just
You have any
his whole
reason or
demeanor.
any
And
encounter prior to that?
no, I didn't know this man. He was actually a tramp that was coming through that town, he told us, and he had us. We then took him to the next town where he wanted to be dropped off with. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
You know, there's also another story that's kind of similar to your story.
We need the
Mic.
handheld mic out here.
Simon, you want to be a runner?
Oh, she was going to. She's here.
Oh.
She's here.
Okay, she's here.
Okay. There's also another story that's similar to your story as well. These young men came into this church, and their plan was to rob the church. And as they came in, they had a seat, they sat down. The pastor kind of recognized, and he sensed, you know, through the empowering of the whole.
The Lord told him trouble's brewing.
That's right. The Lord
Yeah.
had told him, you know, what trouble is coming. And what the pastor did was, without really alarming them or really just doing anything spontaneous, he just continued with his sermon anyhow. And the sermon was talking about forgiveness. The sermon was talking about love as well.
Repentance.
And after he actually had finished his sermon, what they done was then they quietly went over, and they had already locked the doors, everything. And so they called everyone up just for a season of prayer. And then they were praying, the young men just kind of sit there, and they started praying and praying for peace and safety and love. And just in their prayer, just talking about God. And at the end, the pastor walked up to the men and just gently just started talking with them. At that moment, they ended up surrendering their lives really to the Lord. They broke down, they started crying and everything. So
Praise
God
God.
has a way of working out. Sometimes we can just overreact with situations. Job said, "The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord," you know, as well.
That minister, I've read that. That minister was an ex-police officer. He identified what they were doing right off. He somehow notified one of
He had
the
his phone
other
on him.
individuals in his elders or deacons or something to call for law enforcement. Before it was all done, he had entirely disarmed them without force. And yeah,
See, this is what we want to drive home. If we're not connecting with Christ daily, moment by moment, starting out with getting that morning manna and asking the Spirit of God to dwell in us, we're going to miss these moments. We're not going to understand what's happening around us, but the Lord will give us wisdom if we plug into it.
a question that we had also that I want to address here, and I think I saw a hand as well over here.
You did. I just wanted to.
Yeah, we need the microphone because it's being recorded with the camera. So this way, you're not on the camera, but your voice is being picked up.
Okay, as long as I'm not on the camera. Okay. But yeah, God has a way of letting you know when danger is coming for you. It doesn't even have to be for you. It could be your surroundings.
Right.
You could be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And God, a couple of times, has saved my life from gunshots. He put it on my heart. It was so strong that it was telling me, you need to leave. You need to leave. And I went with it. Hour later, someone shot up the house.
Yeah.
And see, I walk with God, so he puts a lot of things on my heart, and he lets me know when I need to move,
Amen.
where I need to be, and I try to listen to him and try to keep walking with him. But that's what I wanted to say, that he will let you know when harm is coming for you.
Amen.
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 Full tank egg.
Okay, so we were talking about axes a little bit last night, and we want to expound on that just a little bit more. So I have a little hatchet here, made by Gerber. And the issue with this, real quickly, this, we were talking, somebody mentioned the steel shank. This, yeah, you want to open that up, Matt?
Yeah.
Literally, the handle is attached by plastic, like a little thin plastic wrap up and around. It has a cute little knife in the bottom. You would think, wow, that's really compact and neat. The problem is, this thing's very, very weak and flimsy.
This head is being held on by a plastic band right here.
Which chips
And the
away
handle
as
is
you-
hollow.
Yeah.
So it makes it very, very susceptible to breakage. Looks like a good idea, but it's a problem.
Not a long term.
When the handles are epoxied in. This one I'm having issues with the head trying. I put a wedge in it, but I'm having issues with the head trying to come off. Then there's when they're put in with a wedge, the next step up.
This one has a wedge in the top. It's got a round wedge here in the top. Wood handle. Wood handles do break. You can go to another level with a steel shank. It's all steel all the way down. The problem is, this is very, very heavy
to carry
compared to this. There's about 1.5 pounds difference, and when you're putting stuff together, 1.5 pounds makes a lot of difference. And so that's why I've chosen. I did carry this one. This one I've actually built a log cabin with. My oldest boy and I went out, and we used hand saw, the saw that I have in my pack, and this axe, and we were working at building a log cabin out in the woods with it. And so this thing has spent a lot of time and a lot of hours in use. The problem is, it's very, very heavy
to carry.
For carrying. But having something a little larger than this, you can do more. But again, there's that weight issue, weight trade-off.
What's the name of that one again?
This one here, this is an East Wing brand, and it's all steel. And so, yeah, it's very durable, but it also adds weight. So you have to personally decide, what level am I? Can I handle something like this, or is this going to be my limit? This is better than nothing. At the same time, you're not going to do as much. You're not building a log cabin with this. It's just not going to happen.
Maybe after 50 years.
Yeah. So
During 50 years? Taking 50 years?
You can do a lot of different things. Of course, building a log cabin takes more than just an axe and a saw. It takes knowledge. And that's the key thing. If you come away from anything that we've shared with you here, it's the fact that we want you to learn how to
use them, not just have the awesome tools in your pack.
I was talking with Simon's dad. I can't think of your name.
Come close. John.
John. I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. We were talking, and there was another man I was talking to, and it was a jack of all trades, master of none. And that for years is what I thought about myself, jack of all trades.
People would say, what are you? And he'd say, jack of all trades, master of none. And I said, stop it. Stop it.
Because it is really good to be diversified and be
Have a
able
lot
to
of
do
skills.
a lot of skills. So, and how you gain skills is by doing. I know you said don't share things, stories, but I got to share this. I'll make it really fast. And that is, I've been a general contractor most of my life. My oldest boy was working with me at that time. We went to look at a project for a job. And the people were asking, can you do this and this and this? And I'm looking at it and I'm going, yeah, we can do that. That's no problem. We can handle that. And we leave. And I talk with him a bit. I said, I'll get a bid put together for you, and I'll get that done. And we get in the truck to leave, and my son, my older boy, he turns to me, he goes, Dad, how are we going to do that? And I said, I don't have a clue. And he's like, what? You just told him we could do it. And I said, no, seriously, I don't have a clue. And he's like, but Dad. And I said, just stop, calm down, don't panic. Because he was like really freaking out. And it was like, we'll work our way through it. We'll figure it out. And there were a couple of points, we'd figured out most of it before we even started the job, but there was some things we went into it going, okay, yeah, and as we got into it, it's like, oh, okay, now we know what we need to do, and we did it. And so a point in taking the time to share that is,
don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to do something.
To set your feet in the Jordan.
So back with packs and gear, I think
Are we going to go to
yes, we want to talk about the knives.
We will do sharpening after we do the clothing, right?
Oh, that's right, after clothing. Okay, we were talking about order. Okay, so I want to talk about clothing and dress. And hopefully you don't mind, but I'm going to pick on a few of you this morning. Nothing personal. I'm just picking because I want to show example. So let's say that we didn't have any gear or packs in here, and we had to leave this room with whatever was on our person right now. So
Not the best, but it works. It's a strike force.
Striker for starting fire. So we leave with what we have. We are dressed as we are dressed, and we go out. Numerous of you before tomorrow morning are going to be suffering with minor forms of hypothermia. Why?
Cold ground.
Cold
Cool
ground,
evening.
short sleeves, short pants. Okay?
Also, not only with the temperature problems with those, but how are you going to run through brambles? You've got a big bramble patch that you've got to be able to get through. No way around it. There's one of them out there.
Yeah. So Melanie, she's got a dress on because she's a lady.
Megan's.
By the way, ladies, I don't take the excuse that I have to wear jeans or I have to wear pants because of I'm going out in the woods. My wife has worked construction with me for 30 years in a dress, on a roof,
with
everywhere,
bloomers.
in
with
a dress.
Bloomers.
And she had bloomers on for the roof.
Yeah.
And so that she wasn't exposing herself. She actually has a pair of pants for when we go camping, hiking out and whatnot.
The wool.
That
the
are wool
we were speaking about last night.
that she wears
Important.
under her dress
Yeah.
as a protective. I put actually my wool pants on this morning and then said, okay, it's just a little much for that. They're a little too heavy. Wool is like the best thing that you can do. You can find military surplus wool clothing. These are some pretty heavy ones. I've had these for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. And they're still, no, I don't wear them every day, but they've seen a lot of wear. You can see the buttons are kind of different ones along the years as they've fallen off and gotten lost. Nice big cargo pockets. Melanie has, let me finish here. And a wool sweater. By the way, one of the things that the most important thing you can do is dress with layers. Dress in layers. Don't.
And pick woodsy colors.
Yes.
We've seen people try and hide in hot pink in the trees. It doesn't
red.
work.
So here's the thing. If we all had to leave right now, we've got 3 here in red shirts. We've got bright yellow. And we've got a few in earth tone colors. You notice the dress is pretty much...
Except for the blue on you.
Yeah.
The one thing that is interesting, okay, so she has blue flowers on here. I have seen with this very dress, put her out in the woods, and that turns into camo.
Yeah.
By the way, if you go dragging out the old, when I carry this because it's a rain jacket and it's warm and whatnot in here, but you go carrying this out and you put this thing on, walk through town. Well, it's a good thing kind of everything goes now as far as dress because you don't stick out quite so much. But it used to be not long ago, you put this on in town, people are going to be looking at you and going,
Yeah,
what are they up to? What's up with them? And so we want to look as much like our surroundings. So when we go to town, we want to blend in. Does Melanie blend in if she's in town at Walmart? Okay?
Not.
No, well, that's true. You don't have your pajamas on, right?
We call them Walmart clothes out west. You go and everybody's in pajamas.
So, so you wear, you know, but the thing is, we try to stick to clothing that is more so to natural environment. Believe it or not, this shirt is amazing in the woods as well. It's a lighter color, but it blends very, very well.
Solids do worse than
Yes.
prints, thank you. And a smaller print, don't pick some paisley flowers that are this big. Pick the smaller ones. That would be good if you were hiding under a magnolia tree, but, you know, with the magnolia flowers, but pick a smaller print. I carry several pairs of socks, wool socks in my bag because of the counsel in Spirit of Prophecy that says, don't let your feet get cold or wet. And you may have to cross a stream. If you get across and you're setting up camp, the first thing you should do is take off the wet socks and hang them to dry and get on a warm pair, even if you're not cold at that point. Because what happens is you will get cold, and then as you go into the evening and night, you're going to have body temperature problems. So yes, ma'am.
What brand would you recommend socks? I have bought socks and it was not worth it.
Wool socks? It's
socks.
hard now to find wool socks. I was actually knitting our own. Dan River was
Fox
it Dan?
River.
Fox River.
Fox River seems to be good, although they're getting less and less.
There's more polyester.
You need to try to stick to, I would say, at least 80%, and that's kind of minimal wool. If you can get a 90% wool, so you have like a little something in there that they use for stretch and whatnot, that helps hold things up and together. But you want as much wool as you can get.
I want to bring out with the
Go ahead.
different clothing. So I carry warm clothing. And my thought with that is, if it's summer day, I have a change of clothes. I might not be comfortable, I might be a little warm. But you don't want to be carrying extra weight of thin clothing that's going to be not productive to you at nighttime. Wool pants, wool sweater, wool long johns, wool button-up shirt. And this is a Pendleton wool. It's kind of hard to find them, but wool is...
Goodwill. You don't want to buy one of those new.
No.
Not unless you're independently wealthy.
So buy somebody else's that they've shrunk already. Yes.
Let's get the
Get the mic up to him.
I know you touched up on it a little bit last night. We have some new people, but can you explain again? Everything that you all have is wool. Why wool?
Wool, okay, we did touch on it last night. The wool, even if you get it wet, if you sweat in it, you will still stay warm. If you sweat in cotton, like cotton long johns, and you get sweaty or you have to cross a stream, it's going to act like a swamp cooler. It's going to chill you to the bone. We came from Tonasket, Washington, where it can be 112 in the daytime, and it's high desert, so it would drop to 50 degrees at night. We had those extreme temperatures. So our packs are literally packed for that. In Tennessee, it's not quite so bad this time of year, but in the wintertime, and if you have to go and you're out there a few months, moving from place to place, you're going to need something that as it chills, you can keep up with it. Ladies, there's also the suit wool, which is harder to find. You can find it online.
That's 100% wool
This
dress.
is a 100% wool dress, and I keep it in my pack. It's light, but this thing is so warm, and yet I wore these in 118 degrees hiking 10 kilometers, was it, in Kenya. and never overheated. Those that were in their jeans and their cotton shirts were sweating profusely. Here
I
I
was
am in
dripping
black.
into my boots.
Here I am in black, and I was fine because the sweating underneath, it actually kept me cool enough. And yet when we stopped in the village, I stayed warm inside the mud huts where it was cooler.
What kind is that again?
This is 100% wool, and it's called suit wool for men's suits.
Something else with wearing long pants and especially long
So
sleeves.
it's light.
When you sweat, your body acts as a, when it sweats, the sweat is a swamp cooler for when it is hot. And it keeps you warmer, especially if you have wool, when it is cold. So if you're at a hot day, you have long sleeves on, you're thinking, I'm going to be super hot because, you know, I don't have the air on my arms. But it will get your shirt moist, and then as the air blows on it, it will keep you cooler underneath those layers.
Wool is also wicking. It pulls the moisture away from your body. So
the other thing we did out west, because of the extremity of hot, and like Mark told you last night, we had Sabbath packs, but he didn't explain why. We were cast out of the church for saying Jesus saves. 28 years ago?
No,
31 years ago. So we've spent a lot of our Sabbaths with our packs, with Bible and a lunch and water and books, and we would hike out, and you can go out in the cool of the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning and be a little bit chilly. We'd walk out, we'd find somewhere, we'd set up camp, and we'd start singing and reading and praying, and then we'd move to another spot, a sunnier spot or a not so sunny spot. There were times it would snow on us, there were times it would rain on us. We were ready for whatever the weather threw at us. One of the things I found during those years of outdoor church, we called it, and we were there sometimes till sundown and beyond if we got lost before we got or went further than we thought we had, is that the counsel in Christian temperance and Bible hygiene was invaluable to us. I would take this suit wool that I've let you feel, or cashmere sweaters for our littler ones, and I would cut the sweaters apart, and I would put in their clothing, in our clothing, or on our daughter's slip, I would put some of this suit wool or the cashmere, because in the spirit of prophecy it tells us, have a double layer on your limbs. The reason is, and if we had people that were medically trained, they could tell you the veins and arteries coming to and from the heart in the arms and the legs are the largest in the body. So the blood pumps out, and out here, if these extremities are uncovered like these young men have here, the blood comes back cooled, and the heart is congested with cold blood that it's trying to pump, and it makes it really hard for the heart. If you wonder why people are having heart attacks at 45, 50 years of age, it's because their mothers never covered their limbs when they were children or babies. And so this was very important counsel that we took, and I would literally put a double layer on the legs and the arms, and it kept us through snows coming on us in the...
These books are
in that room, yes.
In that room. So, recommended reading, Christian Temperance Bible Hygiene. It's kind of on the right side as you go in, just about 5-6 feet in. Any question?
Just a suggestion, because regarding those wool, because I have also been using those stock, but I found this materials, what do you call this, brands, that they also develop this with like a metal lining at the same time, and it wicks out moisture easily. So instead of having those very thick stuff with me, I have this very thin, but I can survive under the snow, putting it on top, and I have a very thin layer and has a metal inside, and it's made by Columbia products. They have that. So it's another suggestion that people who doesn't want to carry so much weight, they can have something like a jacket made of it. So,
Yes.
you know,
Like the thermal tarp or the,
yeah, but what I'm saying is it'll be already part of your
It's part of the clothing.
Clothing?
It's already part of the clothing,
clothing?
that has a lining on metal and wicks out moisture.
Okay. That
So
I
it's just
hadn't
some
heard of.
pricey in some places, but sometimes they're on sale, like those in Colombia. So you can just buy it, and I can
But
use it several times.
My question would be, is the fabric part nylon or polyester?
I think it's a mixture, but
Those man-made products are really hard on your nervous system.
yeah, that's what I say.
It short circuits your electrical system, and it can tire you. Mark suffered a lot. He's had a lot of gamma G shots growing up. Don't ask me why, but his mom thought he needed one every year for years, and it has made his nervous system suffer. He's had not just restless leg, but restless body syndrome. And if I got him into cotton or to wool, he didn't have that problem. But if we went back to polyester or the nylon, then he
The
was like,
synthetic
so how
material.
about
The
that
synthetics.
metal thing that you said? No, it's
yes,
still the same. Like
he's saying they have clothing that way.
clothing
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
It's loud.
This right here, yeah, this is very loud.
It's a poncho.
This is a rain poncho, except it's like it has thermal blanket built into it.
yeah, so
It's an emergency poncho.
And it feels quite warm. I can feel the heat coming back to me.
It's a prepared emergency poncho.
So what I'm saying is like similar to that it has like a metal inside, but it's actually not a metal.
Okay.
It's more of a poncho. It's inside.
You know what I think he's talking about?
So is
I think I
that...
have one in my car right now.
You have one in your car.
Yeah, I can show it to
I would
one of these
like
days.
you to get it out of your car when he gets the
Okay.
the deal up to see if you can be body heat
with,
signatured
infrared heat
with the
It's not
infrared.
there. It's in my other bag.
Oh, it's in
I
your
just
other bag.
realized, yeah, it's up
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I thought
It might be similar to this fabric.
This is Malar.
No.
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 Faraday cloth.
Faraday cloth.
Faraday cloth.
Which retains heat amazingly. So we'll talk about this later. But anyway, question. Hand the mic over to him here.
Sound like what you're saying is, and it kind of goes back to maybe, and you all can kind of give me your feedback as well. It sounds like it may go back to if that's all that you have,
Yes.
then maybe move forward really with using it. But from spirit of prophecy, and the importance of wool and having that wool fabric with us and on our bodies as well, and the benefits that actually come. And I think you raised some good points as far as like if you're bleeding and different things. And I think some of those intricate details is something that we probably don't really think about, how the blood can rush back in and it's cool, and then
Right.
other health issues that it actually can cause, you know, it as well.
Asthma, lung disease.
Correct.
The list of diseases that are caused by improper dress is huge.
Correct.
If people would dress properly all the time, there would be way less disease.
And then the other thing that I wanted to add, I've had an opportunity. It may be very difficult to find really good quality wool, but some of the places that I have been able to find some actually have been at the thrift store. You'll find a lot of good quality clothing that some people have donated at these stores. And some of these people, you know, probably were older people that really had these wool items.
Yes.
I got some socks. I had purchased a pair of socks, wool socks, and then I had gotten a pair from the thrift store. Well, what ended up happening was we came up here and we slept out, and I had the wool socks on first that I had purchased. And I told Keisha, I said, you know, my feet are cold.
Yeah, too much
And then I
polyester.
ended up putting on the wool socks that I actually had gotten from the thrift store, and my feet were like super warm. I said,
Yes.
look at here, Keisha.
Yes.
See, that's
and
the
I paid
difference.
I paid $1 for those socks.
Praise God.
This sweater, this is a Goodwill sweater. These pair of pants, these
Goodwill
are Army
pants.
surplus pants.
Army surplus stores.
We don't,
Yeah, we don't buy new things.
We don't get a lot of new.
I can't afford
a
it.
lot of things.
The other thing I want to say is llama or online you can get alpaca, thank you, alpaca socks. And they are very warm.
Very, very warm.
So you might want to look for those. I think those are a full blend of alpaca.
And then the last thing I also want to leave, and this is something that we can actually go in and discuss a little later on as well, but we also want to be, the times that we're living in right now, you all, we want to be very, very careful with actually going to stores and purchasing new clothes, because with technology now, they are actually weaving into the fabrics nanoparticles. Some of you all may not be aware of really what's going on really with that. That's why I said we can kind of discuss that later on. But these are items that is really well, I'm going to leave that really for another session, right at the moment. But please be careful with actually going out.
Pray.
Because they have these nanoparticles. They have them in the shoes, the clothes. They're putting them in the washing powder that we're purchasing from the store. They're putting them in the hair product. They're putting them in the washing machine. So we're seeing, according to the spirit of prophecy as well, that really we need to go back to the basics of living, how God had intended really for us to live, and how he has intended for us to survive as well during these closing scenes of Earth history.
Most definitely. It's amazing what we can do as far as for simplicity. By the way, it also helps the budget tremendously.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference. Okay, so we're going to move on because we could get hung on that one subject alone. We're trying to cover a lot and get you a lot of information, at the same time not be 100% thorough on any one specific.
We could spend days on each.
Yeah, we could spend an entire day on clothing alone, very easily. Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 10. It says, "If the iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge, then must he put to more strength. But wisdom is profitable to direct." Now let's make that practical. If the iron be blunt, if the axe is not sharp, or the knife is not sharp, then you will have to put more strength, more muscle into it to make it do that work that it's intended to do. But if it's sharp, that wisdom is profitable.
So what does it mean by wet?
So yeah, and it says here, and he doth not whet the edge. Sharpening. So there's lots of different kinds of sharpening devices, different shapes, different sizes.
Diamonds? Diamond
Okay,
stone?
I was going to say, whetstone. I'll show you here in a minute. Some more whetstones. Another whetstone. My favorite whetstone. This, by the way, these things last for years. I bought this back in the 1990s.
When our older boy, who's 32, was a baby.
So, when you work with a whetstone, it has to be wet. And another little tip that I didn't bring in here, I should have. So you get it wet to work your knife on the stone, but if you were to put one drop of dish soap or take a little bar soap and put a little bit of bar soap on it, it's like, if you wash your hands underwater, you can't get all the dirt off. Put a little bit of soap on your hand and all of a sudden the dirt just goes away. So the water and the wet helps to keep the porous
soap
in the stone, well, the water wet and and the soap, right, helps keep the porous clean. So now when you learn to sharpen a knife, by the way, this is something my grandfather taught me. It was on a whetstone to wet it, and he called it wetting it. That was what you need to wet that knife. I knew what he meant. And the first few times that I tried to sharpen a knife, he'd hand me a knife, I'd feel it, and it would be so-so. I'd start working and working and working, and there's different methods. I'll explain that more in a minute. Come back to it, go to check it, blunt, dull. I made it worse, not better. So what I'm saying is it takes a lot of practice. I can show you some tips, which I'm going to do right now, but it takes practice. I make it look easy. I've been doing this for many, many, many years. I've worked on teaching Matt. Matt's getting a lot better. Hi.
I'm supposed to stand close, now I see why.
So a couple of methods for sharpening.
Can I show them how to check for sharpening?
Sure, do that.
So I've seen some people try this method. I'm not going to try it on this knife. So they literally lightly slice their finger just to see if it's sharp.
Running it
Not
like
smart.
this.
Not smart.
No. Some people look at it. I can't
Kinda,
really
sorta,
see it.
that works.
Run your thumb 90 degrees to the knife. I can promise you if you do this right, you will never ever cut your finger.
So this way.
This knife is razor sharp, like a razor blade. As long as you're 90 degrees to it, the bitier
Pull
it
up your
feels-
sleeve and show them how sharp it is.
You should have shaved right there, Yev.
Do you see the hair come off? The bald spot he's got on his arm now? That's how sharp that knife is.
You could cut that. No, you don't want to. You don't want to ruin it.
Okay, so it's a very sharp knife, and yet he can run his thumb across it like this without any issues. Okay, because doing right. If he ran his thumb down it, we'd be looking for the medical kits over here on the other side. So, method for sharpening. By the way, there's also diamond stones here, here.
We also carry in our pack, I have a smaller one than he does, but we carry files. Why do you need a file? You hitting rocks, digging dirt. You don't want to be, you want to keep your tools out of the dirt.
I carry a little larger file than Matt does. Another little diamond stone. So the trick for sharpening the knife.
Show them the round.
So there's a couple of different methods. I think the first thing I would tell you is you got to look at the angle that's already cut. So this knife has an angle down, and then it kind of goes sharper. This one actually does.
Angle, and then.
Okay, Matt's going to show the angles.
There's an angle here, and then it's sharp. There's a.
That one's a good example for the angle, for two angles.
See the two different angles?
You have to match the angle that's there. And with a knife, so you match the angle that's there, and I'll explain the motions here in a moment, but if you go real steep on a knife, so I'm going to hold it this way. So if I go real steep on the knife like this, I will not get as sharp of a knife edge. But the edge that I do get will last longer. It'll be more durable. So if I'm sharpening the hatchet, I don't want a really flat, where the knife is putting it flat to the stone.
Or the hatchet.
Or the hatchet or whatever. Like on a hatchet, I don't want it to be flat like this because it will be very, very, very sharp. But the first time you tick something, it will become dull very quickly. Now, Matt's really good knife has a very long angled edge to it, and it is very sharp, as you just saw.
It only has one angle to it, and
yeah,
that
there's not two
angle
angles, it's one longer angle.
It's a very
So the angle that you hold the knife, and I'm going to use the bigger knife, just might be easier to see at a distance. So if the angle you hold your knife on the stone is important.
You got one angle.
The other thing that's important is that you keep that same angle as you draw the knife across it. So multiple ways, and I'm just kind of drawing, pulling it across. That actually would be sharpening just with what I'm doing right there. So you can do this. You turn it over, you do both sides. You can do this.
Make sure your fingers are down below your stone.
Yeah, my fingers are out of the way so that I don't leave my thumb up here, so I come into my thumb and change that. I've done that a few times over the years. Okay? The other method that you can do, so you can either do a straight, like a drawing over the whole knife. You can do circular motion, work it out to the tip. Notice my arm kind of came up as I came to my tip so that I keep the knife at the same angle to the stone. Working it all the way back, turn it over, work the other side.
And dip it again, you're out of water.
Yeah, keep. By the way, the water stays on. What I like to do with a whetstone is when I have a sink to use, I just turn this faucet on so that it's just barely dribbling out and just lay it right there on the center of the sink and work it. But that method, and it takes, I mean, we could spend an entire day just sharpening knives, but the thing you do, work at it a little bit, feel it. How is it? And you may have it sharp, real sharp here. In fact, I got a duller spot there. It's pretty good here.
You can feel it both sides.
You can feel it both ways, but you'll end up with a sharp spot in one spot and a dull spot in another spot because of how you've worked it. As far as which is best, do you want a diamond stone? Do you want a whetstone? Diamond stones, you don't have to. By the way, this is being a little thinner. I had to really be careful to keep my fingers down so that I don't hit them as I go past. Okay. But as a stone, the problem with diamond stones, they're just a piece of steel sprayed with a diamond glue mix. Like this. That one or this one. And the problem is those diamonds wear off. They're not forever. The whetstone will last much, much longer. The weight difference between here and here is huge. This is way heavier. For a long time, I carried this little stone in my pack. I've gone to carrying the diamond stone. I figure the length of time I'll probably need it, this will be adequate. Trying not to use it a whole lot so that I don't wear it out too quickly. But there's lots of things, lots of options. The other thing I should talk about, different coarseness of stones. And that is, so these are, what are these ones, Matt? I forget.
They don't say, it just says coarse.
Oh, it says coarse and fine on this one. This one it says fine is 600 grit and super fine is 1200 grit.
On the whetstone, I don't know how many of you can see the two different portions of it. This is your coarse side, this is your fine side. There's more of the coarse on here because you're going to wear that off faster. If you use a whetstone without the water, you will ruin your stone.
Yes. What it will do is plug up the pores in the stone and it'll cease to be effective and literally you're done. It's over with. The coarse stone, if I were to choose to, okay.
I can't get it off now.
I can't get it off. There we go. So if I want to sharpen this axe, which do you think I would use, the coarse or the fine?
Coarse.
The coarse. We're going to use the coarse on this because I'm not out to make this axe so that I can shave with it.
Grandpa did.
My grandpa did, yes. My grandpa
would have. Everything was sharp. He sharpened his shovels so they would dig better.
And you ever dig with
Grandpa
a sharp
was
shovel
beyond
versus a dull shovel?
Yeah.
You'll keep
Huge difference.
Yeah.
It makes Ecclesiastes 10:10 fit well. So, but what we typically do is we use a file on our axe.
You don't want to sharpen this direction because of your fingers and it doesn't work as well. Sharpen from back here.
Hold it at the right angle. Start working. And the best way to do it, again, practice. Get, if need be, buy a stone, buy a cheap knife, practice, or get the kitchen knife and practice, and you'll probably make it worse. When I first started learning, it would start getting a little sharper, and I'm like, all right. And I'd work on it a little bit more, and I'd check it, way duller. I made it worse again, so I'd go back and forth, and so you learn to get a, I didn't do this ahead of time.
That's what my boys have done to my kitchen knives. One time they're dull, one time they're sharp. What, you have a hand up. Where's the mic?
You know, like when you're sharpening a chainsaw, the chain, I was told you keep track of how many strokes. I mean, when you're sharpening it. Do you have to do that when you're?
No.
Okay.
It is important with a chainsaw. The similarities with chainsaw versus this chainsaw, you do count your strokes because you want all of the teeth, because you got all these separate teeth, you want all of them to have the same amount of tooth left.
Yeah.
Most people, by the way, would, because you sharpen from one way to do one side, the teeth, and then you sharpen from the other way for the other side, they tend to always sharpen one more than the other, and so you end up with a lopsided, and then your chain goes through the wood like this, and it says pulling crooked. It becomes, and I'm exaggerating it, it becomes a problem then trying to go through because it's fighting, you can't cut it straight, and the bar, and it wants to bind, and so it is important
Sharpen
with
it
even.
evenly. When you're handing a knife to someone, I've noticed here, I've seen it when I was doing the youth meetings and also in here, when you have the knife, you hold it by the back of the blade and hand it to the other person.
You always hand them the handle.
And I just didn't do it.
Yep.
So you hand it back that way.
Yes, we got a hand up.
Yes.
All I have are files to sharpen. So.
It will grind
Okay,
away your blade.
something is better than nothing. But when you're talking about a knife,
that's next to nothing, right? Okay.
okay. But when you're talking about a knife, you really cannot get a knife sharp enough with a file.
And you'll waste your
If
blade.
I was to file your knife, kitchen knife, for you to sharpen it, depending on how bad it was to start with, you'd probably be kind of cross at me because it would be not real sharp.
What, with a file?
With a
Yes.
file, correct. But if I were to, yes.
An axe or?
An axe is, a file works well. That's why
I use the file for these.
That's why we carry the file, is to use it with the larger implements. Now, would I use a file on my knife? Yes, if for some reason I got a big old chip out of my knife, I would use a file on the knife to work that out, then go back to the stone, the diamond stone, whatever, to work your way through that so that you can get it sharp. And I'm thinking, okay, we got about 20 minutes before we're going to break.
So you said on the whetstone is two different
Coarse and
coarse.
fine.
Okay, so you don't do you have to when you're using those like transition? So like use it like if you know it's rougher, you know, got more. You don't have a file. And so would you say if there was more, say, quote unquote, damage or dullness to your blade, would you start with the coarse and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
transition to, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, if it's the duller it is, or blunter it is, you want to start with the coarse.
Okay.
As you get sharper, you want to go finer.
Personally,
so that you can.
For the for the sharpening method, especially for this knife, I found because of its angle, and because if you do the circular, I have seen people tend to do this as they're doing the circle. You can get it a lot more exact if you just do back and forth. You can keep your angle the same. Yes, we need a mic.
When you're sharpening it with the whetstone, can you make the whetstone uneven over time?
Yes.
Yes, very much so. I should have brought my other one. I looked at it and said, oh, don't need that one. I have a stone that's almost like this one, and it's literally worn like almost halfway through. It's very dipped. It's still very effective. It works very well, but I do have one problem with it, and that is because of the change of the angle of the stone, you have to change the angle you're sharpening or you end up getting it duller. So, but the one thing when you work, you don't want to sharpen your knife if you're doing circular or movements. You don't want to just go like this in one spot.
Use the whole
and work
thing.
like this. You want to use the entire stone so that as you're using the entire stone, you're wearing it even.
So you're sharpening on the forward and
He's, yes.
Not just one.
Both ways.
Both ways, both sides. So
okay.
I'm sharpening this, I'm sharpening the one side of the knife going this direction. Okay, now I'm going to turn the knife over in my hand. So now I'm pulling it outward. Notice
try
how
and
I
keep the same angle.
kept my body out of the way so that if I slip, I don't cut myself, because it is important that you try not to be adding injuries, making more issues.
You want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
So practice makes perfect. Look at the angle that's there, the space. That had one guy that had a really hard time. He couldn't hold it the same even. He was running his knife like this, exaggerated, up and down the stone as he's sharpening. Okay, and as he was doing that, of course, it was making it worse. We literally I took a piece of a pin, and I split it, and I slipped it over the back of his knife, and said, now, put that up against your stone. So he had this like little spacer on the back of his knife, and then work it. Within a few minutes, he's like, oh, I'm not supposed to move my wrist. And it's like, no, not in that way. You're not tipping the knife like this as you go down it. He got it. It worked. So we used a little spacer as we drew it across the stone. This angle makes a difference how sharp you get it. Steeper angle, less sharp. Flatter angle,
longer.
But it will last longer. Flatter angle will make it sharper, but the sharpness will not last as long. So usually what I try to do is kind of find that spot in the middle where I can get it really sharp. At the same time, it's not so sharp that it, like this knife, the reason I didn't show you this one about shaving on the arm, it won't do it. It's not sharp enough. Okay, it's because of the angle that I have sharpened it. But this knife will hold its edge longer than that one will, because of the angle. Now, question back here.
So when you get a knife, it has an angle on it. Yes. Are you ever changing that, or you want to stay with the same angle of the knife when you get it?
Depending on the angle that is, that's a very good question. Depending on the angle that's there and personal preference. And yes, sometimes I will take a brand new knife. I did it
Take it out to the grinder.
I did it to this pocket knife. I took it to it and totally changed their angle. I used the more coarse stone, sharpened it.
Make your own angle.
Made my own angle, got it to where I wanted it. I had another knife, I don't have it here. In fact, I don't even think I have it anymore. That knife was, I could just never, no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't get it to really sharpen up like I liked it and well. I actually took it to the belt sander and started grinding on it. And I just worked it down, changed the angle of the blade, sharpened it then with the stone, and I ruined the belt. Of course, the belts, some are made for, mine was made for wood, that's why it ruined it. But, and I knew that, but I wasn't worried about it. But I got what I wanted with the knife, so I changed the angle of it. I wouldn't recommend doing that to start with if you're on the first learning curve. Kind of work with what they've done, what's there.
Something else, if you don't know how to get that curve, put it on there and then feel. You can feel right where that curve is and then stick with it. When you're coming out to the tip, you're not just going to be doing this.
No, you don't.
Notice my wrist.
Brings it up.
And this knife is different than this one because it has a different curve to it. You know, I'm going to be having a different angle.
See, it changes with every knife. It changes with the shape of the knife, the angle of the knife, the way it's pitched. It all has to be done with, it's practice is what it comes down to. Use them. Get your stone, practice it, use it until you get it mastered. This little one, I've carried these in my pocket for a long time, and I will, and not just here, but you might catch me at some points. I'll open up my pocket knife and I'll be standing and talking to you, and standing here going like this, sharpening things up. And no, I'm not looking at what I'm doing. My hand's out of the way because I'm holding it back here. This is a diamond stone. But, you know, you could be watching what you're doing. but keeping it nice and sharp, keeping it practiced. So what's wrong with, and I haven't heard this question yet, I was kind of waiting for it. So what's wrong with the knives that, and I don't think I have some, but I didn't bring one in, that has a razor blade in it? Or that even the knife blade's replaceable? What's wrong with a knife like that? Okay, breaks, yes, definitely. What else? Sharpening issues.
How do you sharpen it?
You can sharpen a razor blade kind of, sort of, a little bit, but razor blades typically are very, very hard steel, so they hold well while they hold, but when they're done, they're done. You're much better off. Now, I have one of those that's a Milwaukee flip-out razor blade knife, and I use it for construction. I like it for that. I've got lots of blades in my tool trailer that's handy there I can grab. Throw another blade in it. I use it on all kinds of stuff. And I don't have to waste my time sharpening. But for a situation where you can't pack 100 or 500 blades with you, you need a knife that's going to be able to be sharpened, and then working on the skills to sharpen it.
If you get a knife, I know there's, we don't have one of them here, I don't think. Some sheath knives they make that have this serrated part in it. The only practical thing I have found for that is striking a flint rod. That's the only thing I have found that are practical. Other than that, get a knife without one and just use the back of your knife for striking it.